Oh, we are.
And yeah, if everything is good, we should be live now.
We are live. I'm
Yeah,
excited. Second
yeah,
stream of the
amazing.
day. Let's do this.
Yep, exactly. So, welcome everyone to today's episode of Everything Outside Code. And as usual, we're going to talk about the really interesting bits. Some folks think they're, pretty boring, but I think they're really the really interesting bits outside software engineering. And today we'll be speaking with a very good friend of mine, Tim. Tim, you want to say
What's up,
hi
dude?
to everyone listening?
I
Yeah.
am
So,
so excited to be here, man. Sorry. Continue. I am always the host in these things. So I take
yeah.
space. I'll step back. It's you.
Yeah, that's that's totally fine. Today is all about you, actually. We're going to be talking about leadership and management, and all the tiny bits about that. So if you're listening, feel free to leave any questions, any comments. We'll take those. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button somewhere down here. So maybe YouTube shares this to everyone else. But over to you, Tim. How's it going?
I am good, man. I'm so excited to be a guest on a stream once in a while. And then when
Yeah.
I saw you were doing yours, I was like, I have a few in mind I want to join, and you were the first one. And then you asked me to come on. I'm like, we're good.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
That,
And
yeah.
mostly my profile is like I know all this tech stuff and it's super important. But if you don't know all like the leadership and the soft skill things, you might not
Mhm.
be as successful. So I tend to talk about that stuff
Yeah.
more than sometimes I think I should. But it's really interesting. So this might be like, did you just mute your mic again? This is so cool
Yeah.
with the light, man. Anyways, yeah. So that's a really interesting thing to be here and talk about that stuff.
Yeah. That's super that's nice, man. Thanks. And like you said, if you don't know or you don't have the soft skills, it's really difficult to at least grow. If you're trying to grow like a business or even at work, you're trying to grow your career
Yeah.
to move into leadership at some point. So let's talk about you. How did you get to here? Right?
Oh
Developer
yeah.
relations.
Yeah, so first I'll tell you where I work now, so we have that bit out of the way. But then I think there's a
Okay.
pretty interesting talk about leadership and how I got to developer relations. So I work at HighGraph as a developer relations lead. However, there's like I have a boss who is the actual leader. I just have this lovely title. I will talk about why that is in a sec. But at HighGraph, we're a
Okay.
headless CMS, and our the real cool thing that we do is that we are fully GraphQL first, and it's also natively GraphQL. So all the things you might expect from a CMS and a GraphQL API are all in. And we have things like content federation that becomes completely native because of having GraphQL. And so content federation means that you can add any kind of API into HighGraph and then use that as your endpoint. So there's lots of really cool things you can do with HighGraph. And well, this is not really a HighGraph stream. I just did that one like half an hour ago. So I won't go
Yeah.
too deep. But how I got to developer relations is kind of an interesting story because I was at agencies. So I worked at agencies like AKQA and Valtech, and some folks watching this might actually know who those are. And if you don't, they're like those global agencies that do like through the line campaigns for people, from posters to iframe apps to videos to movies, all the things. And I worked on the tech side of most of those things. And my last job at agency was at Valtech, where I was climbing the ladder, as we said, doing bigger projects and bigger ones and becoming a leader. And at one point, I had the ability to become the leader for the company globally for front end development. And
Hmm.
so we worked towards it. I kind of had to do the job for like a year, and then you would get it officially because if you're in a global company, like we had 48 offices back then, now it's even more. And so in certain countries, when you say this is your new boss, they're fine, they totally get it. But in other
Yeah.
countries, like where I'm now in France, they're like, oh no, in France they'll be fine if there's a new boss. But like in the Netherlands or in Norway where you are, they're like,
Yeah.
who are you and why are you here and why don't I laugh
Yeah.
you out of the room now? So I've had to do the job for like a year to gain the trust, work with the people, help them out, or they teach me things, all that stuff.
Hmm.
So once I got that, I realized, oh crap, they're so like if the thing becomes so big, if you're a leader
Hmm.
about for so many developers, it's only about the politics. And I wasn't ready. I was not ready in my
Wow.
career to do that. I wasn't old enough, I think, to have the the experience and the weight to be able to say certain things a certain way. And I was always
Yeah.
much more of a doer, right? So I would know how to code and then talk to like a CEO and then get it done.
Mm.
And so a friend of mine who worked at a company called Uniform asked me, "Hey, oh wait, before I go there, to
Mhm.
be able to actually be that leader that everybody trusted, I couldn't just step up and do it like and I had to do the job, but also I had to start making videos, speak at conferences, write articles, thought leadership things, so people would see you and understand, hey, this person knows their stuff, and they're, well, not famous, but at least in the space people know them, and then suddenly it's much
Yeah.
easier to be a leader. So I was literally doing Devrel
Hmm.
to an agency internal, and it actually
Yeah.
led us to hire a lot more really good developers in the French office, because that was one of the goals. And so how do you hire developers as an agency that at that time in the French office looked a little bit like boring, even though we did
Yeah.
amazing work? So I was just outward marketing what we did, doing conference
Hmm.
talks, all the things. So essentially what it meant was I was doing DevRel, but at agency. And then when somebody who worked at an amazing startup asked me, why don't you just DevRel for an actual startup? And I was like, oh, that's actually a thing, right? He kind of described my ideal job to me without me understanding what that job was at all.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
here we are. Like, and now I'm at the second startup already, having done this now for a few years.
Yeah. Wow. And how do you like it?
It's it's awesome and horrifying at the same time. I'm not sure if a lot of DevRels say this to you, but it's like the generalist job. You can do everything
Hmm.
and nothing. And the thing I learned at even being like a super high up leader,
Hmm.
talking to lots of people in difficult situations, you have a line, and that's where your responsibilities fit. And you go towards that line. And when you go over, you burn. And where you're too far, you know, on the other end, it's kind of boring. So you have to be on it or a
Yeah.
bit over. In DevRel, there's no line. You don't know what to do. You don't know what works. You don't know when it works. You don't know what format it works in. And so
Yeah.
I'm coming at this job, and we talked about this right before the stream started. I don't have the DevRel DNA like my colleagues who are incredible. The high graphers like Brian and Lo and Romina, they have come from this educational base. And
Yeah.
for them, DevRel is this amazing idealist movement that really helps developers. I just come at
Hmm.
it through some sort of skills that kind of fit. I have
Yeah.
15 years of experience using headless tools and monolithical tools. And I know all
Hmm.
the people because I was their partnership person at the agency. And then I just fell into
Yeah.
this and started doing it. So sometimes the horrifying part is that I don't know what to do. And the only thing I can do is be super reactive to a gut
Yeah.
feel, make a video, write an article, and suddenly it hits.
Yeah. It
And I've had
works.
a few of those, and then it really worked. But then when you ask you, think about KPIs for DevRel, and then I
Yeah.
ask all my DevRel friends, nobody knows.
No. No one knows.
It's
Even I don't
incredible.
know.
And at HighGraph, actually, we're now working on a few that are actually working, and we
Hmm.
think we found something at this time of our space that is really good.
Hmm.
That's not this stream, but I made a video on that on my YouTube. So if you feel like you want to learn,
Yeah.
go there.
Definitely. You should share a link to it if
Oh
you
yeah,
have it on hand
it's
as
just
well.
youtube.com/Tim Benniks, but I'll write it in the chat for you.
Yeah. If you could put it in chat, that'd be great. Yeah, because
There we go.
like even after
That's in the
you've done it
private
and it
chat. But
worked, yeah, even after you've done it and it works, I think you should share that too with like everyone, like folks
exactly.
in Devrel want to learn like what
It's
KPIs, what metrics
exactly. And
work.
there's so many different approaches to it, right? Sometimes some folks think, you know what? We are going into become a marketing function where we are
Hmm.
completely doing things like like getting people in and then activating them and then doing a lot of
Hmm.
content for like technical content marketing, which is that's where there's a line because you know exactly what to do, which is kind of nice. You just do technical content marketing.
Yeah.
And we chose more the education side of things to really enable people in the platform to be better, because that you can
Hmm.
do for partnerships, you can do that for sales, and
Yeah.
so anyways, that's not this stream, but I'm pretty excited about that. Anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. I think it also, just to buttress that, in today's DevRel space, we've seen also at Hackman by a lot of our partners come to us and say, hey,
Yeah.
we want to enable deeper adoption beyond like
Yeah.
free tier or just beyond the surface usage. Because that's when you get users that will easily be retained, right?
Yeah.
So it's more not just acquisition, but also retention and
Yeah.
driving a lot deeper adoption.
It's very interesting when you see numbers like we really hit hard with like getting new signups and it's working like well. The marketing
Hmm.
team is on fire. And then you
Yeah.
look at the numbers where I don't know the exacts, but it was a pretty high number of new signups. But then the signups actually making a project and continuing was
Hmm.
relatively lower compared. And so you now need to
Aha.
balance it out, right? It is a really
Yeah.
interesting play.
Yeah, it is. Getting having like some activation funnel. That's
Exactly.
it. I think we should have a stream separately for
It seems like
that.
right, and then we can put
Yeah,
my colleagues on, and they have a lot to say there.
yeah. I think we definitely should make that work. Well, speaking of leadership, you
Yeah.
promised us the difference between developer relations lead and lead developer relations lead.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So essentially, what we're looking at HighGraph for developer
Hmm.
relations, we have Lo, who's amazing, and they are in charge of like education related things. Then we have Romina,
Hmm.
she's doing documentation, and for me, I'm leading like the outreach and awareness part of things. That's also part of me being on this stream. That's that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we have
Aha.
Brian, who is our actual head of Devrel. So he does all the things a little bit. He is generally really good at the education bit, but then he also
Hmm.
organizes everything. So,
Yeah.
how do these KPIs work? How do we talk to our CEO and prospects and things like that? Like all these extras that you need
Hmm.
as a leader to figure out, hey, how are you going to promote this person or holiday time? All
Yeah.
that stuff. That's what the head of
Yeah.
DevRel does. And of
Hmm.
course, they set the course of the direction we go into.
Yeah.
Because
As a
as a
team.
dev, especially with me, I'm kind of like all over the place. I get all these like
Hmm.
reactive vibes, and like something happens, I go for it. And then so we have this head of DevRel, Brian, who kind of just puts the guardrails and then that's the
Yeah.
direction. And
Yeah.
I used to do that in another startup, but now I actively chose not to do that. Doesn't mean we
Yeah.
cannot talk about, leadership now because I have a
Hmm.
bunch of experience there. But
Yeah.
here I'm just in charge of figuring out the outreach and awareness.
Yeah, that's cool. So speaking of leadership, what
Yes.
are some of the, I would say, the things that stand out to you from a leader? So how do you recognize that someone is a great leader?
Well, what I have learned, like maybe I can give you a little anecdote of how I became a leader and how that
Yeah.
all came to be and then what I learned from that. Because when I was
Hmm.
in agency and I had done a few bigger programs like for luxury clients and stuff like with 60 markets, so big projects, and I was
Hmm.
never a real leader. I was kind of like in the trenches. And then I joined this new company at Valtech where we started something called the L'Oreal Website Factory. And so L'Oreal is a huge company, right? And so they have,
Yeah.
it's the L'Oreal group, and they have like, I don't know, 20, 30 brands below. If you go to l'oreal.com, you'll see all the brands. And so all these brands were super decentralized because they know really
Yeah.
well how to sell shampoo in Oslo versus Paris. That's going to be a different campaign, different website,
Yeah.
different visuals, everything. And so they have learned how to sell super well decentralized. That also meant they had 3,500 websites that were all crappy because
Wow.
every entity that would be in a city selling something would make their own website, have their own creative agency, their own tech people. it's
They were
it was
like individual
incredible.
companies.
Yes, so it was like a spider's web going out. But and some of those websites were like really like diamonds, and others were like the Danish website had all the languages of the world for a certain brand
Yeah.
when the global website didn't, like all these weird things, and the one was in Java and the other one is in PHP. And so we were in charge, or we were in charge together with like a new setup inside L'Oreal to actually build a global website factory to reduce all
Hmm.
that to like 800 sites. And so I was kind of, I when I started, I was just in charge of building for one of those brands their MVP website. How does this all work? Basics in place, and then
Hmm.
we make it better later, and we clone that to
Yeah.
other brands. And it was quite fast that we realized, okay, we need like leadership to go across all those brands and figure out what is the best way
Hmm.
technically with one stack to service like 15 brands.
Yeah.
And so we had one backend stack and one front end, and I was in charge of front end over the years.
Oh,
And
okay.
you learn so much because if one brand has 60 markets, they will be working with a lot of people from different cultures.
Yeah.
You'll see all these different leadership styles, from people who micromanage to people who frighten others into like being, do things or you're out, or all these different cultures. Like I'm Dutch, I'm super direct. You probably notice it here. But then I
Yeah.
worked with people from France and people from Japan. Well, the range between how direct you are from the Netherlands to Japan is huge.
Huge.
And so
Oh.
I made people cry all the time with my directness of how I would speak, because we
Yeah.
have facts and feelings relatively separated, where
Hmm.
someone from France would actually have this whole feeling of I built this slide deck with all my heart and I'm a
Oh,
philosopher,
yeah.
because they're incredible
Yeah.
people. But if you then say there's a spelling mistake in Garnier, that's actually the brand we're pitching, they would be
Yeah.
very upset. You know what I mean? Oh,
Yeah.
we have Mickey, I think, in the chat.
Yeah. And you asked a question. I think we should take that. I said, how is Devrel evolving? What tips do you have for staying
Oh, that's a
relevant with
very
executives,
different stream.
with leaders? Definitely. Yeah. But you could answer Miki's question as
Oh,
well.
of course I can. Okay, so this is my personal view. I'm not saying this is what Highgraph is doing. We
Hmm.
might, but this is my view. I think for staying, like, there are startups that move in certain directions, right? Like right now, money is not fast and cheap. Doesn't come like not a lot of people are buying, and there's not that many investors just giving you Series C,
Hmm.
Series D run, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to somehow look like when there was lots of investments in like 2019, 2020,
Hmm.
having DevRels was amazing. It's great for brand building, all the videos, all the conferences, it's excitement building, there's documentation and learning materials. The
Hmm.
thing is though, the moment that money is gone and you're struggling to actually get sales and to get deals, well,
Hmm.
what makes your company not super lean? All the people that don't bring in money directly,
Yeah.
right? And at a startup, everybody is basically a salesperson, just in a different coat, right? If you're a startup, that's how it is, at least
True.
under like 10 million ARR, I guess. And so
Hmm.
my personal view is that DevRel is a little bit in trouble, and we've seen this. Like certain companies, they had to grow up and say, it's money making time. We're going to kill the free tier. We're going to go
Yeah.
all enterprise, and DevRel just has no place. Where
Yeah.
and others are like, okay, we're trying to figure it out, but we don't know where to place these people because they're such
Hmm.
generalists, and they have
Yeah.
like all this very in-depth knowledge about certain things or smaller chunks
Hmm.
of whatever the work is. It's not super easy to place them and put business goals on those roles.
Yeah.
And so in some cases they get fired or they're being put in the corner somewhere. And so what I think will really help DevRels is understand multiple disciplines, understand what a partnerships team is doing, understand what a sales team is doing, and then help them with your knowledge. Because if you
Hmm.
want a video edited, DevRel will do that. You don't have to
Yeah.
hire anyone. Or if you need a good blog post written or some documentation or a demo, a
Hmm.
DevRel can do that. So use them.
Yeah.
And then as a DevRel themselves, you have to make sure that you touch where revenue can be impacted. And we
Yeah.
just talked about it before, right? Where if you
Hmm.
make an account and then you have an activation to actually create a project and then keep them coming back, that's where the revenue is, because you might be able to upsell later on,
Yeah.
right? To new features, whatever. If a
Yeah.
DevRel is enabling a developer to be higher in velocity, to easy have a more easier understanding of whatever features there are, and then enable them to ask their boss, I want this feature, let's
Hmm.
buy. Or
Yeah.
let them try 5 projects with great starter kits. And then the sixth, they will tell their boss, we only have to use this CMS or this
Yeah.
whatever. Then you
Yeah.
suddenly, as a developer relations person, pushing impact on when revenue is coming in. And so you can
Yeah.
set KPIs. How fast do people go from an account creation to a project creation with a live API? Or
Mm.
all those kind of things. If that number goes down, there's more
Yeah.
activation, there's much more potential for people to upsell and buy things. And
Yeah.
so sit where you can help the velocity of the people already on the platform.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's complicated because
Yeah.
do
It
do
is.
startups in this space and in this size have the ability to have those metrics? Probably not.
Yeah.
That's really hard, right?
Probably. Yeah, definitely not. I can speak to this from my experience speaking
Yeah.
with both founders at startups and founders at enterprise companies. And like you said, being in a cost center, being in a profit center, that's where
Yes.
everyone wants to be, not in a cost center. During the zero interest rate phenomenon era, we had a lot of like Devrel teams sit in like the cost area. And I spoke to like the
Yeah.
founder of a unicorn recently, and he said, "Hey, we want to work with you guys to sort of drive Devrel, like Devrel developer relations and community support for our product. But right now, developers do not make us any money. So we have no incentives. We have really large enterprises, B2B companies, like businesses
Yeah.
paying us. We cannot dedicate like internal bandwidth to do this." And he's like, even if I bring you on board today, personally, yourself, William, tomorrow I'll change your role to support those enterprises and not be doing
Yeah.
DevRel anymore.
And you know what?
Right.
This is an important point though, because it's not so bad for a DevRel team to be in support of customers or
Yeah.
partnership people though, because maybe that means writing really good documentation, educational material, and certification.
Yeah.
That might be a
True.
direction for DevRel if you wanted to.
Yeah. Like folks in DevRel will say, which I also think is correct. Developer relations, you've got the product part, you've got the content, and you've got community that
Yeah,
you need to take care of. With product, that's sort of like a given because you're building a product, you need to support that
exactly.
product with docs and feedback. On the community side, it's hard to measure, success and value add from that. With content, it feeds marketing and sales.
Yeah,
So I do strongly believe that teams, also from folks I've spoken with, that the way to stay relevant to Vicky's
yeah,
original question is definitely to marry DevRel in some way with the organization's like objectives. Speak to the CFO, find out
exactly.
find out
Know
what
your
what the
ARR.
CFO.
Like
Yeah,
if you know your ARR and you can speak with the right words to the right people in different disciplines, they
yeah.
will appreciate you so much more.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
playing a game.
definitely, and it makes it even more difficult because you still have to do this. You need to please the CFO. You need to talk to the CPOs and folks in the
Yeah,
C-suite, the executives. You need to talk to them to bring out money, the budget. But at the same time, you need to take that and you need to enable developers. You need to teach
yeah.
without selling. You
Oh,
need to
it's so hard, man.
you need to market without marketing, right?
Yeah,
So you need to convince them to try the product to use. You need to help them, right? Help them without saying, "Hey, buy this," without having like very direct CTAs, very direct call to actions. When you say sign up here, because that would automatically be direct marketing, right? So
and
it becomes
yeah,
very tactical. And I think
exactly.
that's where like truly great DevRel folks shine.
Well, if you have the trust, the direct CTA can
Mhm.
work, but you have to
Yeah,
get that trust first. And the only
first.
way for me, for example, to do that is to, I would call it inspire and empower. It's the only way,
Mm, yeah.
right? If people are empowered, they know what to do and try it. And if they're inspired, they want to do it. So
Hmm.
for me, which is crazy, I'm not sure you can see, there's a bunch of guitars there. I just did a
Yeah.
conference talk using HighGraph, but doing a guitar karaoke on stage,
Hmm.
playing rock and roll. I mentioned
Yeah.
HighGraph because the content is coming from it, but that was
Yeah.
completely inspirational for people. And I'm
Hmm.
not sure, but I don't think I've ever had as many direct questions about HighGraph ever. While this
Yeah.
conference talk wasn't in fact about CMS, I was playing guitar,
Yeah.
right? So you need to find all
That's
these avenues.
that's
But
amazing. And go on. Sorry.
well, I think I might have a bridge to go back to leadership.
Yeah, bring it on.
Well,
So I
well,
hope, Mickey, that answers your question, first of all.
well, there's this YouTube clip, and in the chat, there's my YouTube where you can see where I actually say it a lot nicer because I prepared it a bit. But Well, you say staying relevant with executive, right? So you're saying the word executive. Well, those are our leaders.
Hmm.
And going back from, okay, how are leaders good with these kind of folks? Or like devrels and developers are quite similar, where I think if you are a leader in a space like this, the one, like there's three things I think you should give people as a leader. And this is from personal experience. I have lots of anecdotes about this from this L'Oreal program, for example. You have to provide trust, overview, and growth. And so
Mm.
I'm just looking at the slides I made earlier because leaders need to trust the team. That needs to be the root of the culture. Why hire someone if you don't trust them? Of
Yeah.
course, you need to gain the trust when you join. Of course, that's normal. But the leader should trust them and give them complete freedom to actually be responsible, right? It's
Yeah.
really not a micromanagement thing. And people,
Hmm.
if you let people manage their own time and they have enough freedom to be responsible, amazing things happen. Of course, you have to set the course the right direction with everybody, otherwise, it's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
once people understand and you give them the freedom to be responsible, you get these things of like, we'll just try it and ask for forgiveness later. I did that
Yeah.
with all the developers in my teams, and only
Yeah.
once in 5 years somebody came and said, "Dude, I screwed up." And
Yeah.
then what I did, we fixed it together. We sat for one afternoon, we fixed all the things, all the
Yeah.
relationships were patched up, we're good. And
Yeah.
that person felt completely empowered and trusted. And so that needs to
Hmm.
be like this, the root of the culture.
Yeah.
Without that, people will never be feel great about what they do. And so to
Hmm.
be able to actually get um, to that point, you also have to give them overview. Because if somebody doesn't know why a certain decision was made, especially when you're like a developer, it
Hmm.
feels like that is a stupid decision because you don't know why.
Yeah.
Right? You see it all the time where like, oh, we need another Facebook tracking pixel on this website and another
Yeah.
Google Analytics, and it's just horrible and makes the website
Yeah.
slow and it's unmanageable. But
Hmm.
if you have been given overview by
Yeah.
a leader, they will
Hmm.
have told you why. What are the business implications? Why was this shown to be valid for these people? And
Yeah.
sometimes that story might be our customer is actually a little bit um, immature still, so they feel like
Hmm.
these things are important because they don't know how to measure yet. That
Yeah.
sentence alone gives overview, and the developer will gladly put it in.
Yeah.
Right? If you explain
Yeah.
beforehand why something will happen, why and how, it's not a problem. Like
Yeah.
back in the day, I remember we would have like a website and you have to build it in a bunch of different browsers. But then halfway down the project, they say, oh, it has to be in Internet Explorer 6 as well. Yeah, this dates me, I know. But if it's halfway down the project and nobody tells you why, the only thing you can do is be very upset and don't want to work there. But
Yeah.
if they explain, yeah, but there's this group of users that they have that are in that office that make the money for this company and it has to work on IE6, even if it doesn't look
Hmm.
good, that one sentence gives the trust and
Yeah.
gives the overview. You're good to go,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so,
definitely. That's right. I was just thinking, what happens? So this is like a happy path, right? What happens when this doesn't work? I think that's something a lot of leaders struggle with,
yeah, and I
is or a
think
lot
what
of
you
folks
need,
struggle with. How do you let go of people, right? How do you help them improve first?
well, what I think
What
is
do you do?
super important is ask people what they want.
Hmm.
And if that doesn't fully stroke with the collective need of this team, you guide them towards that collective need. That means you are actually hearing them. And then
Hmm.
because in this conference talk that I did a while back about leadership, it's also about users or people in the team. Just say what you want with enough reasoning, and you probably will get it because you thought about it properly, right? And you took the
Yeah.
responsibility. Well, if that's wrong and people don't know the direction and it all feels a little complicated, how do you get people to get where they need to be? Overview. Ask them what they want so they feel heard, and just say, but because of A, B, C, D reasons. This is how it is right now, but we will work actively to do blah, blah, blah. Well, if you guide people towards what the collective needs and you make them understand what that need is,
Hmm.
I've never seen that fail
Yeah. Yeah,
personally.
that's true. Most times it does work. I have an experience where I've guided someone towards that that collective goal,
Mm.
gone through like a plan, but it still just doesn't work. There's either like a skills gap, and we're
It,
currently not
it
at the stage
exists.
where
True.
filling that gap is going to take like a while. So it was most likely just the wrong hire, right? And it's
This
just
exists, of course.
tough.
And
Yeah.
in the end, like because I'm European based, I feel like everybody has their place in this workforce and everybody
Hmm.
has talents, but they might not be aligned with what the need is right now. And then
Hmm.
you have a few things. One is you just teach them until it works. Unless they're senior people, then of course it's complicated because they have
Yeah.
expectations of a job. And then it's impossible. But if they're youngsters and they're eager to learn, then that whole collective needs thing comes back and you can probably get it, but it takes some time. But if it really
Yeah.
doesn't work, advise them on what to do and really help them.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? As a leader, you will help them find a better job. Even in the same company
Yeah.
or another company, you help them because in 5 years, when they're excellent, they will come back and you
Yeah.
have a killer person. So
Yeah.
it's all about the I feel. And one thing though that is really important where people like this is a thing where lots of developers especially, but also I think Devrels because it's very close.
Hmm.
They don't always feel like the leaders see them and what they do and how awesome it is. But
Yeah.
leaders cannot smell that because they're very busy with a very complicated job. So sometimes you just have to show it by having a bit of stamina of showing blog posts or whatever. But
Hmm.
as a leader, you need to be conscious of this. The fact that people do amazing work, you have to stand
Yeah.
still and actually look at that. And so I call this grind and glory because you are 99% of your time in the grind and there's
Yeah.
probably 1% glory, but that 1% glory that you might get after something goes live and somebody says, hey, this person did an amazing job, makes these
Hmm.
99% grind amazing feeling. Then you
Yeah.
learn something. So I've seen it so often that we did like these amazing projects, and as a dev team when I was still more junior, and then the creative director stands up, gets the award and says I did all the work and walks off. It's the worst thing you can do.
Wow. that's
Right.
that's
Like,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that
I
shit
think
happens all over the place. So
really.
understand grind and glory and give the glory when deserved. As a
Yeah.
leader, you have to understand this. Otherwise, it's just not going to
Yeah.
happen.
I think personally, something that's worked for me actually is, just giving as a leader is first, the topmost quality I think every leader should have is the ability to inspire others,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Because that's the way you're able to multiply yourself, whatever qualities you have, and also bring out the best in others. So I've been in teams where the leader doesn't take any glory, like they don't like publicly acknowledge themselves. It's like Game of Thrones. The king doesn't say he's king, right? Others say
Mhm.
they are king, right?
Well,
So the
yeah,
best leaders I've seen, they are the ones that give all the credit, and in one way or the other, everyone still knows, yeah, they helped make this happen. They are the boss.
exactly.
They are the leader.
Exactly. It's I've noticed this. I might not have all the skills to be a great leader, but somehow naturally people see me as that sometimes. I might be able to just say things convincingly with waiters. I don't know how that happens,
Yeah,
but you just
yeah.
work hard and you let like and this is one of the points I had in that conference talk where I said you have to let people champion subjects,
Yeah.
which is sometimes you'll see a developer or a dev or whoever, like a product owner, being super excited about how to lazy load an image, whatever, or
Yeah.
do a cloudinary thing with media. And if you see that someone has this knowledge, let them champion that subject for the whole team. Let them explain it. Let them own how we use it. Let them give feedback on others' implementation, but also guidance. And the
Hmm.
more you let people champion their own subjects, it can change their career literally. And they feel good about having that little thing that's theirs in that team. and then they can
Hmm.
start teaching others, and suddenly they become much more senior because they have to
Yeah.
explain stuff, they have to convince why. All these
Hmm.
things are huge, and you have to foster that as a leader. And
Yeah.
I've seen it myself. I'm a bit of, this always happens, right? When you become a new leader, suddenly what you had before was all coming out of the fingers. You were an SI, you were working, go, go, go. And then when you're a leader, your team does that. Of course, you do a bit,
Yeah.
but not as much. Don't
Hmm.
overtake. Let them do it.
Yeah.
It's really hard, I imagine. Like you in your
Yeah.
company too, right? You suddenly now in charge. How does that
Yeah.
feel, right?
Yeah. It feels it's a lot, but at the same time, it feels great. A lot of my job as a leader, like I'd like to say in stand-ups, is just making everyone else better, right, and clearing up the path for them. I'll somehow be all right. But a great part of what we do and how we've grown really fast is making, every other person better. And I feel like that's what all leaders at least
Yeah.
should strive to do.
But also, like, if something goes wrong, just own it.
Yeah, true. So you mentioned something about asking for forgiveness.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Something I say to everyone that's going to join us in the first interview I have with them is at Hack Mama, we we don't ask for permission. We rather ask for forgiveness. So we'd rather
Exactly.
have you try because we're super small, right? If everyone was to ask for permission before doing stuff, um, we probably wouldn't get like a lot done fast. We just
Exactly.
try to set like the guidelines. We know like we have like responsible guidelines for how we do stuff, but you just go ahead and do it. And if it goes wrong, and yeah, we fix it. We focus on like the solution, and it rarely goes wrong. That's the interesting thing,
Yeah, it's
right?
cool, isn't it? When you give people responsibility to, on their own time,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
do something where, well, of course, they need to understand the goals of the company and your
Hmm.
project. When they say,
Hmm.
okay, this is my North Star, this is where I have to go.
Yeah.
What do I have to do to make this thing work? And for
Hmm.
some people, and this is where this is sometimes hard with different cultures, some people don't give themselves that openness or give themselves
Yeah.
the ability to do that. And people like me, white dudes with a beard in their 30s, they tend to just take that. I'm lucky like
Yeah.
that. Luckily, I understand this works this way.
Yeah.
But as a leader, you have to make sure that everybody feels confident enough to take that space and actually go for it and
Yeah.
be responsible. Because if they weren't awesome, why would you hire them,
True.
right?
True. And sometimes I've had to be like very intentional about people actually like taking their space
Yeah,
because I understand it can be cultural, right? Someone comes on, from speaking with them, from interviews, you've seen the work they've done, they're fantastic, they're great at their
yeah,
job. Even more, they have like potential to be way better, but they just aren't like putting themselves out there. They want to get a lot of direction from you.
yeah,
They want you to like specify everything or give them like to the detail, right? And you'd have to make a conscious effort to say, hey, just do it, like for real, like just do it. And nothing
it's
wrong will
literally
happen.
that works, right? Nike did something well there.
Yeah, exactly. Mickey says it serves a double purpose. You let your team shine and build brand awareness for the product and company.
Exactly. This is the whole key of this whole
Hmm.
conference thing I did about leadership. Let me just find here. So the ability to produce good tech in a high pressure environment is directly dependent on a well organized team.
Yeah,
But basically, what that says is happy people build great stuff. That's
yeah,
essentially what it comes
true.
down to, right?
Yeah, people first, and if they're happy, they build.
Yeah.
They build really good stuff. So you
Interesting.
mentioned
Yeah.
something that piqued my interest.
Mm.
You talked about how you have the ability to motivate people to help them see reason. So do you think leaders are born or they are made? I think this is like a
Oh,
very famous argument.
I don't know. I think they can be made
Okay,
because I
I
certainly did not grow up thinking I was going to be a leader. Like I came
okay,
from a relatively um, poor upbringing. My parents were too scared to even buy a house because that's a big thing. They don't even buy an air conditioner because it's like people like us don't have air conditioners. Like that is
yeah,
the
that's a
mindset.
rich
And
people stuff.
it's totally fine. My parents are both teachers, they're incredibly bright, but you
Yeah.
grow up in a certain place. And
Hmm.
so I certainly was not equipped to at one point do what I do now. And so I
Hmm.
might have some talent in me to be able to convince well across cultures. But I was
Yeah.
horrible at that in the beginning. I'm just
Hmm.
lucky I can speak. I think that's the one thing you can be born with, but also that you can learn.
Yeah.
Being excited about something and well spoken. Like, I think the one thing that I came with, and it might be a defect, but that
Hmm.
is actually the stamina to show others what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's all about the optics of how something works, and
Hmm.
then just taking charge. I'm good in a situation where something is really wrong. I somehow grew up to do that. And
Yeah.
that might be because maybe I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
And that might be the
Yeah.
born thing, but you're not a leader if you just have that. It might be
Yeah.
just you can run really fast from a mugger. Doesn't mean you're a leader, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah. That's
honestly
true.
get excited if there's something wrong in an organization or a project goes to through the crapper.
Hmm.
We have to solve it.
Yeah.
I'm the first one to stand in the trenches and do it. I love that part. And
Yeah.
maybe that's that stamina thing that combined with being able to speak well gets you to be a leader. I don't know. But I've had to learn a lot of things. I've
Hmm.
failed a lot. Like, it might not look
Yeah.
like it, but definitely. So what do you think?
Yeah.
Are you a born
What
leader?
I I don't think I've seen like way better leaders. What I do think, I think with leadership, I see leadership as sort of like a combination of different skills,
Hmm.
right? Most leaders I've seen, they are great orators, right? So they are great with speaking and talking. They are great at negotiation, right?
Yeah.
And they've always been good at negotiation, right? So they've been good at negotiation 10 from when they were kids in school, if they tell you
Okay.
their
Yeah.
story. Yeah, so they're great at negotiation. They have good charisma, right? So they come into a place, they don't just like shy away. When they talk to you, you feel good about yourself. And this is
Mhm.
something they've always done, right? They have discipline, right? They say they're going to do something, they do it. They don't find it difficult, getting out of bed to do something. They are able to like motivate themselves, right? So these skills, you can have them individually, but most leaders, when they have all of these, most people, when they have all of these skills, they tend to perform better in leadership positions, right?
Mhm.
Like you say, if it's a fire, you run towards it,
Oh,
not away
100%.
from
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So if there's a problem, you get excited. You want to like fix it. You don't think about the problem. You're thinking already about a solution,
Oh,
right?
100%.
That's
Yes.
that's sort of how someone will make a great leader, right? When you speak to someone, you're able to convince them. You're able to negotiate in everyday life, not just at work, right? In trying to buy something or just speaking to someone down the street, your neighbor. It's easy to have such conversations. You're
Yeah.
in a room full of people. You don't find it difficult. I mean, it would be difficult. You get like feeling in your stomach, but you can grab the mic and speak to everyone and say your piece, and that's it. So
But
I
to be
feel like,
honest, there are different leaders, though. Sorry to interrupt, because some
mhm,
that, like me, I come from content. So
mhm,
I've only ever been a leader in things I actually understand pretty well. So I can
mhm,
then actually go to a meeting with a C-suite of this L'Oreal type of company and speak from experience. And actually then
yeah,
be, because I can be so confident because I know exactly how to build something. But there are
yeah,
also other leaders, and I'm not one of those, that understand social clues so well they can look
yeah,
around them and figure things out immediately from context and then be an amazing leader right there.
yeah,
That to me is magical. I have not seen that.
yeah. So, but you recognize that,
Yes,
right? You
100%.
recognize that that's possible. So, from me to you, I think you were born with the right skills to be a very great leader.
Sounds good.
that's
I'll take
that's
that.
what that's what I think, right? I feel like you have the skills from what you say. So maybe no one is born with like a timestamp because
No,
opportunity isn't evenly distributed. So no one is born with like a sign on their face that says, "Hey, this person is going to be a leader." But everyone is born with like individual skills that
exactly.
combination of three, four of those skills make them a good leader. If they have maybe six, seven, maybe if I was more disciplined, I would be president. Or
You don't
maybe if
know.
you had if you had the ability to like recognize patterns from nothing, you would be like
But isn't it
CEO of Apple.
also maybe contextualized by the jobs you do and your environment. Because I remember at this one point we were working for, I think it was, yeah, it was Tommy Hilfiger, and I
Hmm.
worked at AKQA at the time. I cannot say much more about the project because, but we can say I worked for for this company, and it was
Hmm.
about a New York Fashion Week live show. So they would actually be in New York running the models on the runway, and we had to build this enormous wall of screens that would show a lot of art while the women would walk by, products, really cool
Yeah.
things. And so we are like, okay, we need 96 televisions. We need a whole bunch of computers to actually drive these televisions and do some stuff. So we came
Hmm.
up with it. It was a very high number of money. Like it was
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. This budget was insane. And so my colleague and I were discussing all this. Okay, so let's just get approval and ask. And then we walk somewhere and we realize, oh no, we are actually the people to give that approval. There's nobody above us making this decision. But we both
Yeah.
hadn't had that experience. And I was
Hmm.
just lucky to be in that agency in, around that time where they just threw us to the wolves. Like I
Yeah.
had this ridiculous project for EA games, for Need for Speed, the video game, right? When you drive
Hmm.
cars. We had 11 months of creative work, shut down all the time, crazy ideas, super cool stuff. And then we had
Yeah.
5 weeks to build it. And they just left us alone. They just threw us the idea and ran. And then we just had to huddle with like 5 people together and build that amazing thing that won a bunch of prizes. And the creative work was incredible, but there was no way we could build that in like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And we had like I couldn't do 3D in WebGL at that time, so we just had to invent how we would do it. Like we did screen captures from the game with 360 cameras, so we could do a 360 view around the car. They were all
Wow.
images, and I built like a canvas video player that would play video clips around, so you could control and like all this shit. Like it didn't exist. And so when you're pushed to your limit, that's when these things come out. And I apparently, when I'm pushed to my
Hmm.
limit, step up and do it. And I've been
Yeah.
lucky that all these times that that happened, it actually worked. And that's
Yeah.
so cool about this company. Like my boss at AKQA, at one point he said, when I have people, I push them to 140% of their abilities. When I go over, they quit. But when I'm below, everybody's bored. And if you
Yeah.
really want people to grow and have super high success as an agency with these type of customers, 140% is where it is. So for six
Yeah.
years, I hardly slept. That's why I'm bald. I think I used that bald trick for a while for a few different things. But interestingly, I learned so
Yeah.
much. And also, they gave us 100% trust. They just threw us in front
Yeah.
of the wolves, in front of
Hmm.
CEOs of these companies where we didn't even know how to build something. And we just
Hmm.
did it. And so, yeah, it's also
Yeah.
the
I,
luck
I
I had to be able to prove myself and the fact that it worked.
yeah. I totally agree with you that, it might sound like unethical, right? But my personal opinion is that, you know, uh, the best swords are forged in fire. Like
Oh, this was definite fire.
diamonds have to withstand pressure. The best
Exactly.
work experience I've had is what a lot of people will consider as like really hard. To the
The thing
extent
is,
you might think it's others would think it's traumatic, right? And this
well,
is just
while I
response
did
to
it, I was
trauma.
crying. But now I can look back. It's like that was pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, I feel the same way, but others would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe that's just this is just you going through some form of like trauma. But
Yeah.
I
But
look back to it
mm,
and I'm like, I really appreciate the. I think I really appreciate I would say the forging process that I
yeah,
went through, going to like such experience with work, and you come out of that and you feel like you can do anything. You feel like
exactly.
there's no problem that you can't solve,
Because
right? You
I say
just
this
haven't
to
found a way
youngsters,
yet.
like sometimes when I had lots of interns that would come into our teams, and then I would tell them this to see how they would react, and sometimes it was fine, sometimes I had to step it back a bit, but we would
Yeah.
say until like 30 years old, work-life balance doesn't exist. You just do because it's all
Yeah.
the same. You have to learn because if you know what your absolute minimum is and your absolute maximum,
Yeah.
then you can choose after 30 what is my life.
Yeah.
And we
True.
just pushed people to the max, but always as a leader, conscious of what you were doing and then seeing, hey, is
Yeah.
this working? All of them
Yeah.
stepped up, and all these interns are now leaders at these agencies. I shouldn't have left, man.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. A lot of people, do not agree. They feel like at any, and again, it depends on what's important to everyone. I came from like similar poor background as you did. So I'm originally from Nigeria, and where I live, we had to like hustle for everything.
I
So
think
coming from
there's
that,
still a difference there. We had so much social health care and stuff. Like that's still different. Let's be honest.
yeah, yeah, I think there is a difference
There's
with
a
that.
difference
But
there, of course. I needed to say that,
yeah,
but please continue.
yeah, coming from that,
Yeah,
and then you just know that you have to do whatever it takes. You have to go over and beyond. If it's 140%, you need to give
yeah,
150, 200. Um, the notion of like having like a work-life balance, theoretically, it could sound good, but to each their own, right?
yeah,
Like for
exactly.
yourself, you need to go over over and beyond, because
I wonder if
it's
it's too
just the
far
leverage.
if you burn though. Like if I wasn't married, I would probably have moved to New York and just would take that to the max, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that would have been very healthy though.
So where I'm from, we joke, right? And this could also be considered as response to trauma, which is you just keep working. You look at the problems you have, and it's like, yeah, you cannot afford to be burned out. You just keep doing it. It's on it's considered unhealthy. But you're like, what's unhealthier? Do you really want to be like very poor, or do you want to be rich but burned out? So you have to you have to pick which one. So it's crazy, but that's like a mental decision. Sometimes
It's
you have to
incredible,
make.
man.
Yeah,
But the
but you just
fact
have
you're
to.
here where you're based now with your own company coming from that's incredible, dude. So you were
Yeah.
probably born as a leader.
No, I'm still not there. I see like there are people I look up to. There are
Oh,
people
me
I
too.
definitely look
Clearly.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not yet at $1 million in revenue, in yearly revenue. So I still have a lot of inspiring to do, and getting people
It sounds
to
already quite a
do
lot
stuff
better than a lot of
myself.
startups, dude.
Yeah, it is. But thank you very much. I think we're like
We're way
um
over, yeah, like 8 minutes.
way over time. Yeah, but this was really fun. I have like a ton of like stuff I wanted to talk about, but we should do this again
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
should.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on, Tim. This has been
Exciting
great.
times.
Yeah. And for anyone that wants to find Tim, your Twitter is at just
It's just
I
my
think you
name, Tim
type
Benniks combined.
yeah, Tim
Yeah.
Benniks. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tim Benniks combined on Twitter. They can
My name
find you
is
and
weird
ask you
enough
any.
so that can work.
Yeah, it's unique enough.
Well, let's say if in my language, Ben
Mhm.
and Nix, when you go to English, it means am nothing.
Oh,
So I
that
guess
sounds
some of my
poetic.
forefathers were just lazy as heck. So they when they gave out last names, there you
They're
go.
like, nothing. I have nothing.
This
I have
this
nothing to
person is
say.
gonna have nothing, and there's no need at all.
Yeah, it sounds quite poetic though.
I hope so.
Nothing. Yeah. But anyways, thank you so much, Tim. And for anyone listening, thank you for sticking around. Thanks, Mickey, for being around and asking us really great questions. And we'll see you all next week on another episode of Everything Outside Code. But for now, let's keep shipping on, doing great or whatever it is
Let's
we're
keep
working
shipping.
on.
I like it. Cheers, dude.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.